blame or responsibility, it seems to be you're either in one or the other camp. Whereas actually there's quite a lot of nuance in between, isn't there, as well? You know, people either go, it's the parents' fault, or apologise for my child, I can't believe that they did that. They're not normally like this. You know, Fifi the dog's not normally like this. Make sure I send them to bed without cheese.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. I'm just going to hold all the cheese related questions for maybe another podcast. But I think what I'm hearing here is a lack of definitions, because we are increasingly shouting monologues at each other and not really having meaningful conversations with any intention to understand, indexed on being understood and engaging with people that are completely aligned in our thinking, which is weird because the irony is you never sharpen and truly understand the root of your thinking. But without getting into that, I think blame and responsibility are used synonymously, and they're not. I mean, they can occur simultaneously, but I think they're very different things, and they produce very different outcomes for the individual and for people. You know, like I don't know if I was born with, but I developed Tourette's. All right, let's go there. So when and this is fresh on my mind because I have a friend of mine whose kid is likely has Tourette's, and she's been reaching out to me. She's obviously quite concerned. There's nothing I could have done otherwise. There's no decision I could have made that would have not given me Tourette's, right? And it's completely not my fault, but how I manage my Tourette's, how I deal with both the limitations that Tourette's presents and the advantages that it presents, because it does present advantages as well, how it affects me positively, negatively, the things that I'm skilled at doing, maybe a little bit because of Tourette's, and the things that I absolutely struggle with because of Tourette's, brain damage, being on a whole bunch of other issues. It's all my responsibility, whether I could have changed it or not. But it doesn't mean any of that is my fault. And I think sometimes responsibility is used as a weapon or an accusation. It's something we shout at people. You need to take responsibility, no excuses. Unless, of course, it's me. Then I have lots of excuses and lots of reasons why I don't need to take responsibility. But I'm all for responsibility. And I kind of responsibility is one of those things that creates agency. And it expands possibility. And I think it helps mitigate the adverse impact of constant stress.
I think from what you were saying there that hit me was the first of all, you said fault. And that blame is such a negative word. And then you said responsibility. And responsibility, depending on how you interpret that word, can be taken very differently. You know, give you responsibility. Here's some money. You can go to the shops for the first time and make your own choices. That's an excitement. I've got responsibility, as you said, ownership. I've got, whereas it's your responsibility can be heard as, again, forceful blame.
Yeah. I think that's why words and semantics are highly important. When I look at responsibility, I look at response ability. What is my ability to respond? And I don't think that is a punishment. I think responsibility is something that is greatly freeing, and it creates this sense of what's possible for me. I think it's a great coping strategy as well. So being on the Tourette's thing, in addition to Tourette's, I didn't understand it at this time. I didn't understand it until I was an adult and was evaluated. You know, I've had probably nearly a dozen major concussions. Who knows? Maybe more, but right around there. And my brain always did not work the way other people's brains worked. And in some ways, it worked spectacularly well. In so many ways, I struggled with things that you wouldn't assume people would struggle with. And I think that's what made me frustrated or adults around me so frustrated,
Can you
or
give us an
living
example of that?
like to tie my shoes, something
Right.
like that, or learning how to use simple tools, learning how to change a light bulb. Like there are just certain things where you would expect a kid of a certain age to be able to do, and especially growing up with highly abusive parents, they would just snap. So
Yeah.
there was no tolerance for these things that I should be able to do, but couldn't learn how to do very quickly.
Yeah.
So, and and as I got older, I started to develop these beliefs about myself until I met somebody in a working environment. I went to work for this guy at 18 years old, and he saw something in me, and he became extremely demanding of me because he's like, you know what? It's not that you cannot learn because I think you're pretty smart. I don't think you've discovered how you as an individual learn yet. And I did. And I did in the most at the time. It's so funny. The way I learned how I learn became one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced in my life for a span of 20 years. But at the time, it was horrible. And I learned by vocalizing, I learned by teaching. And once Mitchell, who was my mentor at the time, he owned the Gold's Gym where I was working. Once he discovered that, and he knew I discovered that, he became so demanding on me. And when I was in my senior year of high school, I remember all of these social workers, well-meaning, right? This is not to criticize them, but they wanted to get me grants for free education. They wanted to get me like that I couldn't get for myself, according to them. Now, mind you, I'd been working since I was 10 years old, but they seemed to think that I wasn't capable of getting jobs like being a busboy, cleaning tables, and they were going to help me. They wanted to give me free bus passes because I wasn't able to do these things on my own.
They were
From their mind,
making assumptions.
they were making assumptions that I found quite hurtful and infuriating. Where here comes this guy and he's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. You just function differently. And I'm going to expect more from you than anybody else ever has in this particular area. And looking back now, who do I look at more favorably? The people that were like, oh my God, it's not your fault. You're not capable of anything. Don't worry. You need other people to help you, you poor little thing, which is not empathy. It's sympathy, which is
Mm.
something very, very different, has a very different impact, and it comes from a very different place and intention. Not always, but often. Or this person who's like, I don't care. You're going to do these things, and they're going to be very, very difficult because I know you can, and I know you'll excel. And I look back with so much admiration and gratitude for this person who just demanded so much from me to the point of literal exhaustion day in, day out. Because what he was saying is, you're able,
But
you
you were
have the
thriving.
responsibility. I started to thrive as a result, not during the process. During the
Right.
process, I thought I was languishing until the moment you're not. And I don't know exactly what that moment was, but I
Right.
know I know the time period in which it occurred. And there was a shift in me doing things that were still very, very hard, but the impact on me and on other people were starting to change dramatically.
So he gave you, in a way, um, amazing personal trainer does. He gave you the tools for you to self-discover your strength, your that you wanted could work on, but also that ability to see what you were capable of, what you did have control over.
Yeah, he didn't tell me how, right?
Mhm.
Because he's like, why I hired you. That's why you have a job. The how. You're here to solve problems. But he told me the what, and together we collaborated on the why, and I found that to be invigorating because it was the first time I had ownership, one over myself, two over something bigger than I was. And I thought that helped me transcend a lot of the day-to-day struggles that I was having that I didn't understand yet, that other people didn't understand yet. And I think there's a middle ground. There's a middle ground between understanding yourself, and people needing to be empathetic, and then being treated just like everybody else. Like, for example, if there's certain patterns and rituals when I was on the road, if I was going to speak in the morning, I had very specific rituals to get my head focused. And if I did those rituals, it would be no problem. As a matter of fact, most of the time I knew I would do very well. It was very predictable because it was almost a conditioned response. And it wasn't about craft. That was something different. It was about preparation. Think about somebody in the Olympics, not saying like anywhere near what an Olympic athlete has to do. I would speak up in front of a room. So I wouldn't like put myself up in the air. Very different. Making
Would
the
have been worth
comparison.
watching though.
Yeah, they both. You're probably only going to get to see it once, but I feel like they're both in an environment, a speaker and a pole vaulter, where they need to perform very well according to the rules of engagement, what they're about to do. They're both going to go through rituals, whether that's pacing back and forth, listening to something, going through certain movement patterns. And if I went through these steps, I would do well. If I didn't, it would be very difficult. And people around me sometimes, not everyone, was like, I don't understand why you have to do this. I don't understand why you have to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning and like at a coffee shop at 5 and going for a walk around whatever town we happen to be in, whether it was rural in the middle of, I don't know, like, yeah, okay, you don't have to. It doesn't affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something at 5 in the morning that you'd rather have me doing? No, you're sleeping at 5 a.m. Don't worry about it. So you don't need to understand it. I don't care whether you understand it or not. There's certain things I cannot do unless I do this. So in that case, you need to be empathetic. However, if something went wrong in the actual session, they would have every right to be, okay, Bobby, you dropped the ball here. Versus, oh, well, has Tourette's. Yeah, not capable of really doing this. That's insulting. And I think that's very damaging. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a balance of where you need to accept your limitations, and not like everybody else has to accept your limitations, but you need to draw that boundary for you to function. And then you need to take responsibility for the things that you are capable of taking responsibility for. Even if you're not the one who caused it, you'll still be in such a better position. I think what blame does is it disempowers everyone. Something or someone outside of my control has caused this, or I am fundamentally flawed at a deep level, so I will carry this shame and blame and leave myself no capacity to recognize the difference between what I wanted to have happen and what my behaviors were in the moment and how to make those changes. Because when it comes to the grit of ownership and taking responsibility and behavior change, if you look at the research of Kristen Neff, which is brilliant, it starts with self-compassion. Self-compassion is a critical component of change and growth.
When you were growing up with Tourette's, did you have that compassion for yourself, or did you have anyone around you that had compassion for it?
No, absolutely not. I thought there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I was like, you're different than everybody else, and there's something deeply wrong with you. Not saying I don't feel that way today. I've gathered a lot more evidence to support that. However, back then, the teachers didn't want me in class. They didn't know what was going on. I mean, we're talking about the 1980s.
What were
So
the first symptoms, though? Did it just come on, or did?
yeah, the first symptoms, I feel like I don't know, because when people think about Tourette's, they think about conspicuous symptoms. Like the first thing people think about is coprolalia, which is the like, loud, unconstrained vocalization of expletives. Roughly about 10% of the people with Tourette's have coprolalia. I did not. I had echolalia, which is equally irritating to me, which is where you scream out things that you've heard. They're not expletives. But
Right.
for me, my big one, I remember, there was a lot of things I went through, but one that stands out in my mind was Coke is it. The Coca-Cola commercial with like, Coke it. And I would just like, Coke is it. And it's like, oh my goodness. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until I got to the is it part. And it's like, oh, this again. So the tics were humiliating. but it's impulsive behavior. It's quite intimately to ADHD, which people were pointing out signs of that when I was 5, which I don't know how you diagnose that in a 5-year old, but whatever. People seem to be very bothered by how quote unquote hyperactive and distracted I was. But when I got to about 9 years old, there were physical tics. So I would blink and I would
Yeah.
have a head jerk that was quite aggressive because I
Yep.
knew I was ticking because I could feel it. It was very uncomfortable. And the first time it would happen, like this hard, swift backhand, like, what was that? What is wrong with you? I didn't know what I did. And then just the frequency and intensity of those ticks started increasing, especially when you're in a household where don't know when I'm doing this. I know
Hmm.
I'm constantly doing it because I feel it during and after the fact. And I know when I do it in the house, I'm going to be beaten and yelled at. When I do it outside in the street, I'm going to be mocked and ridiculed by my parents publicly because public humiliation, give him the incentive to try to control this thing that he doesn't know is coming on. And shame and public humiliation is not a good way of dealing with Tourette's. Tourette's does not respond to shame. Alcoholism does. So it just that's kind of like growing up for me, and then going to school. The kids were just, I mean, kids.
Yeah.
So that was
Well,
very difficult, but it was teachers as well.
yeah. We didn't understand it because that would have been in what, 1986, 88 or
Yeah,
something.
it was the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So it would have been around 85 ish is when all that stuff started happening and nobody understood it. My parents found, I don't know how they found this, God. Um, these 2 doctors that were pioneers in Tourette's, Elaine and Arthur Shapiro at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. Great people, just incredible individuals. I remember I went there for a weekend, like a bat. I didn't stay over, but I left and came back. But like these batteries of like hours and hours, and like, okay, you have no idea what that was, and they explained was based on what they knew at the time, and they started talking about prescribing medication, and that's when my stepfather he got very interested in it. He loved having me on meds, but anyway,
What
point being,
medication were you on?
oh, geez. Well, one I remember clearly was Haldol, which is not a medication you put like a 9, 10-year-old kid on, but it was new. They didn't know what it did. So they're like, oh, well, we reckon if this doesn't kill him, it might help. So yeah, Haldol horrible. But what I learned, and when I'm saying learned, I didn't learn it then. And a lot of it I learned recently, is you have to have a brutal self acceptance in the same psychology as taking complete and total responsibility. Those two things have to coexist. Should have probably led with that instead of the whole Haldol and Tourette's story.
No, I think that, I mean, at the moment there's a lot in the news about Tourette's with the handling of so I'm sure everybody listening to this knows, but in case anybody doesn't, there's a fantastic film called I Swear,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about a guy called John Davidson who has Tourette's growing up in the 80s in Scotland, and nobody knew what it was. And he started ticking at a time where he was trying to get a scout coming to see him for football. Anyway, the whole journey of the film starts off with him receiving an MBE as an adult for the work that he's done over years in helping raise awareness of Tourette's
Mm-hmm.
and helping other people with Tourette's after being hospitalized by being beaten up because of his Tourette's for different scenarios. And he has, what did you say, what did you call it? Sorry,
Coprolalia.
Coprolalia. So he
Is this
has
the
that.
guy with the BBC at the awards ceremony
Yes.
that's in the news? Just like, okay,
Yeah. And
interesting.
starts the film off. So this is not a spoiler because if you watch the very beginning, he's there to meet the Queen, and the first thing he says is "F the Queen" to her. but obviously they've explained and he apologizes. And within the BAFTA, he says a slur which is a horrendous slur, and I can't imagine what it would be like for Delroy
Hmm.
Lindo and Michael B. Jordan to hear that, also not knowing in that split second, oh, was this the guy John Davidson that the film is about, of how he has the type of Tourette's that gets him in a lot of trouble, you
Yeah.
know, and that there. But in that moment when they're celebrating this marvelous film, Sinners, which again is another absolutely phenomenally incredible film, if anybody hasn't seen it yet, go.
One of the better films I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it
In
was
a
so
long
good. Good. Um, anyway, so obviously we're there, and I just think it was handled really badly. Everybody was jumping to
time.
the
Fair point.
conclusion that John, yeah, should have apologized, but they didn't ask is did he? And the answer to that was yes, immediately and repeatedly. And then the action that he took was to leave because he was mortified. And he was reassured by the BBC that he could come celebrate this movie of his life. They put him next to a microphone, and which was because he was edited out previously throughout the whole BAFTAs for different things that he said. Um, and but the other thing is there was 2 hours where they could have actually deleted what he'd said.
And they
And
didn't.
not only that, um, the BBC, they go up to those two actors and say, are you okay?
Yeah,
So I
because
think,
this is a guy with a disability, so just deal with it. It sounds, without knowing all of the details, it sounds like the organizers of that event, and
mhm,
I'm always very hesitant to dole out criticism because there's a lot of moving pieces that I don't understand. But it sounds like there was gross negligence and insensitivity all around to everyone involved in the way the organizers of the event dealt with that or did not deal with it.
absolutely. And what struck me is that people ended up jumping into the two camps you said, blame or responsibility. There wasn't, I didn't see this conversation of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Why did that happen? How was it handled? How was it followed up? You know, um, because things are really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is part of our problem as a society. And not to jump to extreme conclusions, I think that a lot of us struggle in our interpersonal relationships because of this thing. It is the narrative in my head has supremacy over having a conversation. And like we say things like quote, we quote, seek first to understand, then to be understood. But increasingly so. And I don't know if that's the cyber environment that we've created for ourselves. I don't know if that's the result of this perpetual feeling of life getting more complex, difficult, and therefore we're functioning at higher levels of anxiety, which causes a lot of our executive functions to be depressed. But we don't seek to understand as much as we insist on being understood. Let's just have
Yeah,
a conversation about what happened. The
yeah,
people in front of the room, that is a horrible and unacceptable situation for them. The guy with
absolutely.
Tourette's, horrible situation. And I know because I was reading some of this because, obviously,
Hmm.
on many levels, it's something that draws my attention. But what was the intention of the person with Tourette's? And everybody's right. Everything everyone said could be possible. You don't know. But it could also not be true. And there could also be a different context about what it is that produces a tick in the moment and
Mm,
where that tick actually comes from. I do agree with the apology. If
yeah,
I had, and that again, coprolalia is not something that I have really struggled with.
yep,
Not saying that my Tourette's did not facilitate profanity, but usually as a result of very low impulsivity
Yep.
and my tolerance for stress at the moment, that threshold was lowered, but it was never, it was um, in any specific direction, and mostly what it is, it was echolalia. But if I had said something, like I think I said something on the train once to nobody at all, and it was just said very aggressively. I'm not even sure what the thing was, but I didn't even know I was doing it. Somebody turned around to me and said, "I'm sorry, were you talking to me?" And it was like, "No, mate, not at all. Sorry,"
Yeah.
because I don't know what I said.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I said it until you feel yourself say something. But I can imagine being on a train, standing next to me at that moment. What is that like for that person? Yeah. The correct response is no, sorry, mate.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with you.
I
It's an
mean,
acknowledgement of this is your experience of the world. You don't know my diagnoses. You don't know my personal history. You're not responsible to. You don't know
yeah.
me, but standing next to me, because I know that I do things and I engage in the world in a way that is quite disruptive for people. One of the ways I know this is I'll be at the checkout queue and the person like working at the shop is lovely. And two people in front of me is like, "Oh, thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you for shopping here." Next person will come up. "Oh, have a great day. Thank you so much for shopping here. Yeah, bye bye." And then oh, they're friendly. So I'll rock up and I'll go, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" And I'm trying to engage. And they'll just look at me very uncomfortably. And they'll just give me my change and move me along and be quite rude about it. It's
Yeah.
not them. I was doing something and I don't know what I was doing. I was probably standing in the queue shouting at a Mars bar for no reason whatsoever, unprovoked. Mars bar did nothing to deserve that treatment, and they witnessed it and made a decision. I
Yeah.
understand like stuff like that very disruptive. I remember my ex-girlfriend was going through a walk in the neighborhood when we lived in the West Village of Manhattan, and she saw me from afar. I didn't recognize her because I was very distracted. And she said, I had my hand in front of my face and I was pointing at it and screaming at my hand. I don't know what my hand had done, but apparently I was very upset about it. And she's like, "Oh my goodness." She's like, "Could you get back inside the house? Like, I don't want like seeing you out in the street. They know I'm with you." And I was like, "Okay, that is very." Now imagine something that occurred at that event. That's more than disruptive. That's more than jarring.
Mm.
So whether you had disability, whether that came from a darker place or was completely incidental given some other context, yeah, I would imagine would be appropriate in that situation. And respectful, not just for the recipient of what happened,
Yeah.
but for John Davidson.
Yeah.
In my view, as someone with Tourette's, it is respectful
Yeah.
for people to an acknowledgement. Not sorry, that was my fault. Sorry,
For
that
the
negatively
tick, for the out.
impacted you in a
Yeah.
hurtful, uncomfortable, awkward way. And it is my responsibility to deal with what happened. Versus, "Oh no, you're not responsible. You have a disability." That is demeaning and
Yeah.
disrespectful.
My second cousin has been diagnosed with Tourette's. She's in her 20s. And then obviously I know yourself, but I would really be interesting to talk to you about the film once you've seen it as well. I thought it was an incredible movie, and obviously the lead guy, best actor, the supporting actor who was absolutely phenomenal as well. I thought it was really well done, and you go on this journey with him, and the young boy who plays John as he develops these tics, again, just so sensitively done. One of the scenes that really stood out for me, he had said to this young lady as she walks out of a shop the most inappropriate thing he could say. She's not very happy. Later on, she brings her boyfriend and his mates, and they jump him from underneath a bridge, beat him up so badly. And he wakes up hospital. He's got black eye, broken bones. He's obviously done something to his neck, and he's ticking in this
Oh,
restriction. And
okay, I feel that.
it's just absolutely heart wrenching. And that aside of that went on in the BAFTAs, I think it's great to have this conversation about how they could, going forward, handle it better, make sure that those on that stage get that apology. But I highly recommend it as a film to have this understanding. And as a young boy, he tried to kill himself, and it's
Mhm.
only when he was given an opportunity to be in a house where the woman in the house who thought she was dying um, said, in this house, you don't need to apologize. Outside, different, because as you said, if there's a scenario that could be offensive, those things, yes, because you need to explain the context and the situation she's, but here you don't. And it was lovely sort of seeing that development. And my hope is that it does help people to have more understanding so that they can ask better questions.
I think that's a good idea anytime we don't understand something. Rather than,
Sorry,
right?
that sounded so obvious.
No, I mean, and I didn't mean to take the piss there, but I feel we come to extreme conclusions without asking a single question. I know one person had written, I think Tourette's, they just they just use it as an excuse to get away with stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, people like, I think homeless people just trying to not work. Yeah, sleeping outside in the like in the alley, they're just getting over. It's like, is
Yeah.
there is that based on your deep neurological expertise? Is that based on an opinion of one? Um, it's like my own with Tourette's, and it's not limited to me. It is so humiliating and difficult and challenging to be out in society. You would want to do anything other than have a tick.
Mm.
So I find it very hard to believe that I don't know, maybe there are Tourette's people just getting over on saying the worst things they could possibly say. Who knows? There could be a population of people out there. But I don't think that's universal. I don't think assumptions like that are accurate. And it's not, how many people you run into day to day that have Tourette's?
Mm.
It seems like many, I mean, nearly everyone, to be fair. But I it's a matter of day to day. If I don't understand something about you, maybe a question
Yeah.
might be better for both of us and universally than an assumption. And
Obviously
with
now my
that,
algorithm is completely full of people with Tourette's, highlighting, how it was and how a lot more people are asking questions and talking about it. But also the nice thing about that, I have seen since the initial sort of aftermath and people firing blame and accusations, and uh, and can understand from different sides. But now I feel like there is some really good coming out of it. People are Tourette's. Um, they're also like this, having conversation about what could we do, how could we handle
mhm.
things better, what questions can we ask?
I mean, and stuff like that. And when you look at it, what are you really interested in? Are you interested in the spectacle or are you interested in a deeper understanding? Again, not with Tourette's, with people in
Yeah,
general. I
Yeah.
mean, roughly around 10% of people, I don't know, maybe 15% have coprolalia. Yet nearly 100% of people on the internet with Tourette's have coprolalia. Why is that? I think because
Yeah.
if you start at like, if it was this guy with Tourette's who like twitches, blinks their eyes, short attention span, and struggles with puzzles, like how many people are really going to follow that account? Right? It's like I
Yeah.
wanted this, but then I have an opinion about it.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like what are you trying to understand? And not everybody's responsible to understand my disability. But I think we will grow as individuals and as people far more readily, do better in our job, and struggle much less with the mounting stresses that we have to contend with in today's world if we opened up and communicated with one another. Curiosity, empathy, and inquiry. Anyway.
That sounded really great. And I was going to ask you this question. It was a bit random and left field. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can ask you that now. So, because you said growth, biceps. What's your favorite way of growing your biceps? What's your go-to? Just for fun.
I think for me, it would be loaded elbow flexion.
Do you have a particular type of weight? Do you like using a bar? Do you like using dumbbells?
I would probably I would say I have a pretty large carrying angle. So I would say if I had to choose, obviously barbells emotionally feel great. But if I had to choose, it would be dumbbells. Why? What's it for you?
Ego, love a barbell, definitely. I can, can just in the middle.
But feels amazing, doesn't it?
It's that and a leg press for me. I can't go to a gym without using a leg press. It's just something that, but
I'm not a biomechanist and I don't want to be critical, nothing wrong with leg press, but I don't think it's the best exercise selection for bicep growth.
God, no. No, certainly not for da-dum. Oh, that was too quick. I nearly missed that one. But yes. If you had to choose a beer that's not a Belgian beer, what's your go-to?
Oh, bitter ale.
Bitter
nice
ale.
ESB. Lovely.
There we go.
And if I'm in a really different mood and it's midwinter, proper stout.
Proper stout.
Or stout porter.
Excellent. Well, there we go. We've learned which beer to get you and which is your go-to.
Thank you, Joe. Well, this was very productive for me then. All right. I've got to crack on. Great talking to you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Bobby. Cheers. Thanks for joining us.